This unusual exercise that is not a deadlift variation will dramatically improve your deadlift and the strength of your lower back in general. Plus, if you're struggling with lower back pain during or after your lifts, or feel your lower back unstable and imbalanced, this exercise will help you relieve your symptoms and make your back rock solid. This exercise is the seated QL bend, and I always combine it with a bonus exercise, the seated side bend. Simply by implementing these two exercises to your regular strength program, you will go from a problematic lower back or a weak deadlift to new strength levels. But why would an exercise like the QL bend improve your deadlift so much? That's because this exercise is one of the best ways to target and progressively load the quadratus lumborum muscle, or else QL, which is the secret power of your lower back. Okay then, so what is the QL muscle and why you need it? The QL muscle is located exactly on this area, which is also the area where some people experience pain during or after lifting. It connects the iliac crest with the 12th rib, and one of its main functions is to stabilize the lateral movement of the hip, which is this one. And why does this lateral movement have anything to do with the vertical direction of the deadlift? Well, that's because this happens all the time during deadlifting. You see, when you lift a weight from the floor, the force applied from your two legs is not equal. One leg pushes more than the other, and this creates lateral forces on your hips. This was also evidenced by these two studies that found that even when participants started with a symmetrical stance, the force applied from each leg during a lift was asymmetrical. And where does this lead your lower back and hips? The asymmetry forces your hips into a lateral movement that is stabilized by your two QL muscles, with one of the two always working harder. This eventually develops an imbalance that for many people also leads to instability, pain, and reduced strength gains, since it's harder to progress to heavier loads. But what happens when you lift heavier? Does this asymmetry get better or worse? Unfortunately, we now have evidence that this asymmetry increases as the weight of the lift increases. In a 2020 study, investigators asked trained individuals with an average deadlift 1RM of 150 kilos to perform deadlifts either at 60 or at 85% of their 1 rep max. During the lifts, the participants were standing with each leg on a different force plate that accurately measured the force applied from each leg. The results showed that the force applied from the two legs was more asymmetrical in the heavier condition. So going heavier will probably increase the size of your asymmetry. However, is this something you should worry about? Well, this isn't exactly earth-shattering news. A certain degree of asymmetry is completely reasonable in all bilateral movements, since we all develop from a young age a dominant and a non-dominant side. In that sense, it's reasonable to place slightly more effort on the one side, but of course this becomes a problem as the size of the asymmetry increases. However, in the case of the deadlift, this asymmetry can be detrimental from an early stage, and without a doubt it becomes more problematic as the weight increases. However, training your QL muscle is not only about dealing with asymmetries. Even in the perfectly balanced body, the QL muscle does most of the work in the stabilization of the hips in relation to your lumbar spine. For this reason, it's something that you should be training independently either way. So the obvious question is how to properly strengthen the QL muscle. The solution to this problem that will make your back rock solid is training these two muscles unilaterally. In other words, one at a time. So your main goal should be to achieve equal strength, strength endurance, and flexibility in both sides. To do that, you'll need to know exactly how to perform the two exercises that target the QL muscle. So let's see how to properly do them. The best exercise to target only the QL is, as I said earlier, the seated QL bend. I chose this exercise instead of others because it isolates the QL muscle better and also lets you progressively load it with different equipment. To do it properly, you need to have a wide stance and direct your movement so that the center of your chest goes to the center of your knee. Keep the opposite glute in place and don't let your knee fall inside. The aim of this exercise is to do both the side bend and the rotation of the spine. This will isolate the QL muscle and you should feel an activation on this area. You can use this exercise as a stretch of the QL muscle if you insist on the end position, or as a strength training exercise with dynamic movement and weights. However, you should always combine this exercise with the seated side bend where the chest is facing forward. In this exercise, the QL muscle works in assistance with the obliques and the erector spinae muscles. To properly do this one, you should keep the same position but bend on the side with your chest facing forward. So in this exercise, we only do a side bend and not also a rotation. And these are the two exercises that you need. One to target only the QL muscle and one to train the whole system of the lateral flexion of the spine. The question though is how strong do you need to get on these two exercises to get results? Based on experience and observations, my standard for lower back strength is to try to achieve the following strength ratio between deadlifts, seated QL bend and seated side bend. Based on the weight of your 1 rep max deadlift, aka how much you can lift one time, you should be able to do 10 reps at 7% of that weight on the seated QL bend and 10 reps at 15% of that weight on the seated side bend. So if for example you can lift 100 kilos on the deadlift, do 10 reps with 7 kilos on the seated QL bend and 10 reps with 15 kilos on the seated side bend. And to make things easier, these are the numbers that you should achieve in relation to different deadlift 1 rep max. Currently, there are no studies on this, and the strength ratio that I presented in these movements came from the progress I monitored in the people that I've trained for this purpose in the past 3 years. And of course, as this database increases, I might slightly adjust these numbers in the future. For now, I can tell you that I've seen all of these people go from a problematic lower back to new strength records just by achieving these numbers. And if this video gets a lot of likes, I promise to do more videos on how to increase your strength with evidence and experience-based recommendations. However, only getting stronger will not get the job done if you don't have equal flexibility between your two QL muscles. You see, many will find out that they can go all the way to one side but much less on the other. To balance this, you should add some sets of static stretching only at the end position of the seated QL bend. And this stretch is called seated QL stretch. Another reason that you should do this after your regular deadlift program is to make sure that you relieve some of the tension that builds up on this muscle during deadlifting. So what is the optimal way to combine all this into your program? After your normal deadlift program, add the seated QL bend and the seated side bend as accessory exercises of your workout. Then at the end of your session, do only the seated QL stretch to increase or sustain the flexibility of this muscle. But knowing all these will not yield the results that you want if you don't use the right sets, reps and intensity. A gradual introduction of these exercises in your program should start with only body weight in both exercises for 2 sets and 6 repetitions with 30 to 60 seconds rest intervals. This will also act as a small test of your initial capacity on these two movements. From that point, you can slowly advance to 3 to 4 sets on each exercise, 8 to 10 reps, and weights that will gradually approach your target goal as was described earlier. And for the static stretching at the end, you should start with 30-second stretches on each side and for 3 sets. You can gradually progress to 60 seconds on each side for 3 to 4 sets. In my previous video on lower back pain, I provided a free QL training program that includes a gradual progression of the training variables for people with lower back pain symptoms. It will stay free for another 2 months, so you can download it and use it as a reference to build your program. Keep also in mind that for people that are not in pain, a faster increase of the intensity than the one that I provide on this program would make more sense. And the most important question is, when should you expect results? You should feel a relief at the area from the first time you do the stretching, and it will take only a few sessions to start seeing noticeable results in your flexibility. Your strength, however, is going to need a bit more time, and you should expect some soreness in this area during the first period of this program. In most cases, you should be in a much better position after 8 weeks of doing this consistently. However, strengthening your lower back is only a part of your posterior chain muscles, and to ensure a steady progress, you need to build the strength and hypertrophy in glutes, hamstrings, and upper back. However, to build muscle, you need to make sure that you train with the right intensity of effort. You'll find the most evidence-based recommendations on how to do that in this next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.